and welcome to another episode of Coast Connections. Today we're coming to you with the FireSmart message, how you can do your part this fire season to mitigate the damages that wildfires can do and protect yourself, your family, your property, and your community. Joining us today, we have David Dales, the Assistant Fire Chief from the Nanaimo Fire Station. Hello, David.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. You just scrambled in here.
I did.
Yeah, hopped off the truck into the studio.
Kind of, yes.
Thanks for taking time out. I know it's a busy season for you.
Yeah, but it's an important message we need to spread out. So.
How long have you been a firefighter, David?
In May, I entered my 31st year.
Wow. Wow.
So
You don't look old enough.
I like to say I started when I was 12.
Okay, yeah. They were recruiting much younger back
Yes.
then. Yeah. So, David, let's talk about some of the elements of fire, like the weather is a factor, fuel is a factor, and topography is also a factor in how fast a fire will spread and the intensity of it. So let's talk about the nature of fire a little bit first before we give our tips.
So what we found, especially over the last 5 years, especially coming out of fire season 2021 into 2023 and last year, is the fires are more frequent. They're getting hotter, and I can talk about that. That's a fuel issue. But they're lasting longer during the night. So there's less, the fire doesn't quite diminish overnight like it used to. So when you add up those factors, so warmer climate, fires lasting longer and hotter and not cooling down at night, it makes for problematic fire behavior because it's harder to put out.
And why is it that it's not diminishing at night? Is it?
It's climate change. Things are just warmer. We used to call it fire season, but we've had fires in the North Peace region of the province almost all year. So the term fire season is slowly ending. It's just fires.
And fires also are underground.
We had holdback fires up in the Fort Nelson area. So those were fires that were never really extinguished. And then when the snow was removed and they got a little more wind, and some warm, the fire had reignited.
Wow.
But we don't get that quite here, especially on our mid-zone of Vancouver Island. But in focusing on our mid-zone Vancouver Island, we are seeing new fire behavior that has never been seen before.
Such as?
Fires are getting hotter, and they're lasting longer, and they're harder to put out because that nighttime they don't quite diminish as much.
Don't get that cooling off.
We don't get the cooling off, and when temperature and humidity cross over, so temperature is higher than relative humidity, the potential for ignition increases. And what we're finding is the humidity isn't dropping as fast at night as it used to. So the humidity is not increasing at night. So when the temperature isn't dropping at night and the humidity is staying quite low, the fire behavior continues.
And then the fuel source, the plants and trees, if they're not humid, they're drier and they'll ignite.
They're extremely combustible, yes.
And conifers are more combustible than
They are, but it's not so much the tree that catches on fire. It's the cycle of life in the forest where everything lands on the forest floor.
Right.
That's our problem, because if we get an ember in there or it's a crawling fire, it's got lots of fuel, which kind of brings us to the FireSmart.
Exactly. And FireSmart has been around for how many years? Maybe.
I'd more than 30.
Yeah.
The concepts have probably been longer. Our Indigenous have been practicing FireSmart, for probably a couple hundred years. But we've really adopted it in the last 30 years. And I've been exposed to it for about 15.
And we're working with Indigenous peoples to
Yes.
incorporate their practices into our
very
current
much so.
practices.
That's more at the BC wildfire level, but yeah, very, very heavily leaning into the Indigenous to learn their culture and what they used to do and try and bring that back. Because at the end, we try to avoid all that duff, all that organic material that's on the forest floor. Because if we remove that, then the fires don't get as hot.
Right.
And fire is life. You'll hear stories of a big fire in a section, and then 10 days later the deer are back.
Right.
Eating all the new pop-up or plants, and so it is life. But we just need to focus on that heavy duff material of dead organic material, because when that catches on fire, it gets a lot hotter, and then the fire then ladders up to the rest of the tree.
Let's talk about some of the nature of fire itself. Like it'll spiral, it'll form pyrocumulonimbus clouds. Talk a little bit about that. Just what happens when wildfires start taking off.
So wildfire is driven by the environment, heat, humidity, but wind. And when you get high winds, high temperature, low humidity, the fire will run, and it will consume, and it creates its own weather almost at extreme levels. And then when it gets hot enough, then all organic material will catch on fire. So even standing timber will catch on fire. So what we're finding is, with the changes in climate, that we're getting more of those hot, wind-driven fires. And those are the ones that have been problematic in the North Peace, 2021 in Vernon, 2023 in West Kelowna. Those are those fires where all those factors come in: high winds, high temperature, low humidity.
I've got a photo of around the Vernon area in 2021 at my sister's place, where the fire, the pyrocumulonimbus cloud is coming over the mountain, and you could see it coming, but we were just amazed at the speed at which this came over the mountain. And it just went all dark for a while, and it sounded like a really, really bad hailstorm. And when the wind had passed, there were embers, David, like this size on the deck, around the lawn, and ash everywhere. I thought an ember would be like the size of my thumb.
I was at the White Rock Lake Fire in 2021. And wind-driven, lake effect, all these factors that we never really thought about all happened. And we had rank 5 fire, which is one of the highest rank of fires we get, where everything is consumed by fire.
Wow, total devastation.
Total devastation. And nearly impossible to counter.
A little bit about topography too, because fire travels up.
It does. Traditionally, on a south slope, fire will run uphill, but there's new factors that are in play. One is lake effect. I'm not a climate scientist. I'll leave it at firefighter level. At night, the lake will draw the fire downhill. So it's lake effect. So when we tell people fire generally does run uphill, but in certain environments, it can come down. Or you'll get a fire that's like a creeping, crawling fire. If there's fuel, fire will go where fuel is. So, and again, if there's organic material to be consumed, fire will find it.
You can't outsmart fire.
No.
But you can be fire smart.
100%.
And it's all about being prepared and mitigating the risk.
It is. Fire smart, when you to use the term, peel the onion, it's about landscaping and housekeeping. Again, landscaping on some very solid principles, and housekeeping with some other very sound principles. And it's keeping organic material away from your house. And using the environment of Nanaimo, we're focusing on the side of the house to 1.5 meters. There are 3 zones for ignition zones we like to talk about in FireSmart, but in more of our dense urban areas, we really focus on the immediate zone, and that's up to 1.5 meters from around your house.
So let's talk about that really important zone and what people should be looking at in terms of removing combustible materials, things they might not even think that are combustible.
Very much so. I just did an assessment prior to this interview, and when you have a wooden combustible fence that travels along your fence line and then does a 90-degree turn and comes right up to your side of your house, that's problematic. If the fence is on fire, the fence will bring the fire right up to the side of the house. So we're really trying to keep anything that's combustible away from the 1.5 meters around your house. So that's, buying mats in front of your door, non-combustible material as opposed to a combustible material. If you do have plants, have them in pots so they can be removed when the summer's around. Landscaping, a leaf blower. A leaf blower is amazing because those fine particles that can accumulate in around your house, a leaf blower will get that out. So we really focus in FireSmart on that zone from the house to 1.5 meters. Try to have nothing that's combustible around there. Because what happens in a wildfire is embers will be cast sometimes kilometers ahead of the fire.
Wow.
And if we're in an environment like that, a lot of times that community will be evacuated. And when you evacuate a community, you eliminate a lot of the eyes and the ears of the community. And what happens is firefighters will move in that community, and we utilize strategy and tactics of tactical patrol. We're constantly driving around looking for any ember that's landed in some combustible material and has caused a little fire. Because little fires turn into big fires. So if we eliminate those fuels, eliminates a lot of those little fires next to the houses.
And that includes cleaning your gutters and your roof, doesn't it, David?
Very much so. And in FireSmart, we're not saying, build a concrete bunker surrounded by gravel. What we're saying is try and do a little bit extra every year to remove those combustible materials that are next to your house. If you have landscaping and you're in a position where you don't like that landscaping anymore, go to a local nursery that has experts in FireSmart and find a replacement for that landscaping that is FireSmart, because there are. Cedar hedges up against the house, problematic.
Yeah. Bark mulch.
Bark mulch is problematic as well, because again, it's just all combustible material. So there's replacement, gravel, concrete paving stones, on gravel. There's lots of ways to be creative where you can just minimize those combustible materials. If you go to a nursery and ask for an alternative to bark mulch, they do have lots of alternatives.
Also, FireSmart website has just a plethora of resources.
The FireSmart website is amazing.
Yeah.
It's interactive. FireSmartBC has an amazing YouTube page as well with lots of videos showing research and literature that validates the FireSmart principles and where it's had success.
And there's a really good self-assessment tool on there as well. You can just print that off, go around your property.
100%.
And just look at
And
things.
if you go on the website, it's homeowner tools, tons, especially for people in condos, single family, multifamily, rural properties, farms, it's all on there.
And stacking your wood, if you have a wood burning fireplace, what are some tips about that?
So, yes, I get it. I grew up with a wood burning stove. Every day I went and got wood from the wood pile. Having a wood pile next to your house is problematic because it's combustible material. If you are a wood burning stove, we recommend what fire would you have close to your house? Small amounts. Have the wood pile located somewhere else. Again, it's not ideal, we get it. But again, a wood pile, especially that is maybe 3 or 4 years drying, those embers will land right in between that wood pile and it will cause a fire, and then it's immediately your house is on fire. And again, if you were in your house, you would just come out, you'd smell it, you'd put it out with a fire hose. But if your community is evacuated for safety reasons, it's hard for the firefighters to be everywhere.
Absolutely.
When wildfire comes to your neighborhood, there's not enough resources. There never will be. So your plan A has to be you and your FireSmart. Plan B is the fire department. So you can't rely on these resources because they might be scarce. So avoid having, or if you do have a wood pile that's close to your house, have it in a way that the embers can't get to it. So maybe it's in a metal container of some type with a lid. So it's still close, but it's not completely exposed to those embers.
Or even a metal roof over the top of the wood pile.
It is,
that
but
might help.
It's amazing where those little embers will land.
That's the problem.
Yeah, I've been deployed where an ember will go through an open window that has a screen.
Wow.
And the next ember finds the hole that the first ember went through the screen. Now you have embers landing on the bedding. Now
through the screen.
Yeah, so by closing your window, avoids that. So there's little things.
Yeah, so if you have to evacuate, make sure the windows are closed, garage doors are closed.
Yeah, connect any hose.
Skylights.
Yeah, connect any hose to bibs. And what we found,
connect
all your hose to your taps on the outside of your house.
Make sure they're...
Have a garden hose connected.
Right.
So if my firefighters are in your neighborhood and you have a little spot fire, we don't have to necessarily deploy a hose off the fire truck. We can use your own garden hose to put the fire out.
So during fire season, you should always leave your exterior water on, like
Yeah,
if it has to be.
Yeah, and have hoses hooked up.
Yeah, okay, good to know. And raking out under the deck too. Often debris will just accumulate under there, or
It is.
skunks and
It's those
creatures.
It's again the principles of FireSmart landscaping and housekeeping. Embers will find combustible materials wherever they are. So you have to do everything in your power to try and eliminate the combustible material in that 0 to 1.5 meters of your house.
And what differences have you seen in communities that are, or neighborhoods that have become fire smart?
Again, if wildfire is on the landscape and it's in that wildland urban interface, I have been to communities and homes that have been fire smarted. It just makes the responding firefighter's job a lot easier, and it allows them to do more work because they're not focused on doing a tactical fire smart. A tactical fire smart is when firefighters respond to a community and they basically go to every house and they remove everything that's from 0 to 1.5 meters. They'll move the barbecue out to the middle of the lawn. They'll move the floor mat, or they'll move cushions. They'll maybe take that wood pile down. So again, landscaping and housekeeping is what it makes the job. It's almost like 1 + 1 = 5. If you do work and we do work, the result is a lot higher than not doing the fire smart.
David, what about barbecues and propane tanks for barbecues and propane tanks for fireplaces? What should we be thinking about to make those more fire smart?
Well, when wildfire comes to your community, there'll be, generally in where we live in Nanaimo, you'll follow your local media, follow the BC Wildfire website. You'll get a sense that wildfire is coming. That's when we ask our community to remove all those items, move those propane tanks, move them from the side of the house, maybe disconnect the propane tank, put it out in the middle of the lawn. If you have to barbecue that day, bring the propane tank back, hook it up to the barbecue, do your barbecuing, but then take the propane tank and move it elsewhere. So if the fire does come close to that house, you've done a lot of the work that we would do, so it allows up to go to the next house and the next house.
So you're saying if we're evacuated, that the fire responders will actually remove that stuff from the perimeter of your house?
We will. That's one of our tasks.
Yeah.
We like to call it prep and go.
Right.
It's one of our strategies. So we'll flood a neighborhood with fire trucks, and generally they're fire trucks from other communities supporting that community. And the firefighters will come to each address, they dismount, and they run around your house and they do a tactical fire smart.
Wow.
So if you fire smarted your house in advance, those firefighters then can go to more houses.
And save a hell of a lot of time. Yeah.
The synergy is a lot higher, yes.
Exactly. Wow. I did not know that. I thought
We officially, I don't know if it's called
You're there to
tactical
put
fire
out
smarting,
fires.
but it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, it's that you have to be your own plan A, we'll be plan B.
Yeah, don't count on the fire department to be your plan.
Just because resources are going to be thin and scarce.
Yeah. Now, what about people who aren't in single dwelling homes but are in condos or multifamily units? What can they do on a smaller scale?
Again, if you have green in your neighborhood and you have wind, organic material can still, even if you're in a condo, organic material can pile up in little piles on your patio. Embers will find those little piles. So again, housekeeping and landscaping.
Yeah.
So housekeeping, maybe in June, you kind of be on top of that a little bit more. And you just make sure that those are done. If it is August and we're in an elevated fire danger, maybe move your cushions inside. Use them while you're sitting, but then take the cushions inside. Remove, again, 0 to 1.5 meters, anything combustible. So in a multifamily, that's your patio.
Exactly, yeah. And also parkades. Leaves and debris accumulate underground.
Focus on your strata if you're in a strata environment. Housekeeping, leaf blower. Leaf blowers are probably going to become a more prominent tool on fire trucks responding to the wildland urban interface because they're very effective to quickly remove that fine organic material that's all around your property.
Shouldn't be a leaf vacuum to vacuum it all up, not just spread it around?
Well, we don't want to necessarily capture any of the leaves. We just want to get them out from around those little tiny hiding places and get them kind of out of the way.
And the FireSmart program, there's incentives for stratas and individuals to do this, isn't there, David?
There is. So again, through the website, there's from farms to condos, there's great tips, and there's lots of support. There's assessments that can be made. I helped a family today, a long-time family in Nanaimo, and they asked for an assessment. Traditionally, that's not part of my regular job,
Right.
but I had some time today, so I was able to do a quick assessment. But there is support if you got your whole neighborhood involved. There's community recognition programs. There's programs to make farms safer. Not to sound dramatic, but FireSmart works. So there's lots of support in the FireSmart program, even if it's just you in your own condo to you organizing your own community. And in Nanaimo, we have 2 recognized communities, Protection Island, and then we have a community in kind of the north.
Let's give them a shout out.
Well, it's Protection Island and then in and around Lost Lake.
Lost Lake area, yeah. And again, there's a lake effect happening there too.
There is, and it's just self-exposure and wind, and it's a bunch of like-minded residents getting together, being supported, and it helps with landscaping. There's some grants that can be accessed to help pay for the removal of the organic material. We have a problem in this part of Vancouver Island with broom.
Yes.
There's ways to help remove the broom. You can be supported. So again, lots on the FireSmart. You really have to get in on the FireSmart website and see how it applies to you personally.
Now, you also deploy to fires around other areas of the province, don't you, David?
I do. I'm fortunate to be supported by my fire chief, mayor and council. What's called a single response group, so I can be called upon by the province to go to another community to kind of, my role is kind of a bit of a direct line supervisor, where fire trucks from all over the province will go to another community, and then we do what's called structural protection and structural defense. So we're kind of the relative of the BC wildfire, which focuses on the wildland kind of interface. It's where it blends into that urban interface. That's where we're involved.
Right, and that's where a huge conflict happens when wildfires in urban areas.
It is, and as everybody wants to live in BC, we're moving more and more into areas, and we're creating more wildland-urban interface. So the BC Wildfire Fire Services has really created a real strong, robust program in both structural protection and structural defense.
Let's talk a little bit about farms and FireSmart
Yeah.
and people with animals. How can they help mitigate the risk there?
So FireSmart does have a ranch and farm program. It really focuses on creating space in and around farms to just, again, it's using FireSmart principles of landscaping and housekeeping, but it's really supporting those farms to make their property safer. So if a wildfire does come in, we know the importance of our food security.
Right.
In 2023 in the Fort St. John region, where we were deployed, we really focused on the farmers' feed. So if we can keep feed from perishing in a wildfire, then the feed can be used for the animals. And then the animals can be part of our food security. So again, FireSmart has seen the need to create farms safer and more FireSmart. So they've created a lot of programs for that. So if you own a ranch or a farm, you can contact the FireSmart program, and they'll actually have local people who will come out to your farm and do an assessment and try and make it safer.
And all that is free of charge?
For ranches and farms, there is a fee that can be attributed to that, just because it could take tens of hours to do a proper farm.
Yeah.
But again, it's encouraging farmers that whenever they're doing, say, new construction, they go to the FireSmart principles. If they're removing old landscape, they replace it with FireSmart landscaping. If they're putting a new roof on, maybe they get more of a non-combustible material.
Yeah.
So there is support.
Very good. All very, very helpful information. That's tremendous. In your role, what have you seen some of the biggest mistakes that people are making in and around their properties that you drive by and you go, whoa?
Cedar hedges. What we're finding is where I see new construction, and they're doing landscaping that doesn't meet FireSmart principles.
Right.
Either the contractor or the homeowner, I wish I could have been inserted in their decision making earlier, so they would have made that house just a little more FireSmart from the start. Luckily, a lot of our contractors are using a lot of non-combustible materials on new construction, but there are the odd, people will put planters a little too close to the house and they put cedars in them, or just, not FireSmart landscaping.
Right.
So now, again, our environment here, we don't live in the Okanagan. We don't live in the Fort St. John area. But we do have a bit of a microclimate here. So we do need to make sure that if you are doing landscaping, check with your local nurseries that have experts in it, and they'll encourage you to find landscaping which is equally as beautiful, just meets more of the FireSmart principles.
Very good. And also, David, just in emergency preparedness, if you are on evacuation alert, your grab-and-go bags, make sure those are handy and well stocked.
You had my colleague on earlier, Evan Lloyd, who's the emergency preparedness coordinator for the city of Nanaimo. Always have a go bag ready to go, especially in wildfire season, but always. And just, have the conversation in May with your family. What would happen if wildfire came to our town?
Right.
Where do we go? What's our contact? What would we grab? What sprinklers would we put up? Do we have a kennel for our animals? Because you might have to go to temporary housing. You might have to go to a reception center. So, where your animal might be exposed to other animals. So if all animals are in a kennel, there's less confrontation between.
Less chaos.
So just have the conversation in May that wildfire season's coming and we're not immune to it here.
Excellent information, David. Thank you so much for all of this. And I just really hope for you and your staff and for our community and everybody that this wildfire season is a little bit gentler to us.
We hope for the best, but we do plan for the worst. And again, just, if you can tell all your viewers, go to the BC FireSmart website, have a look. There's lots of information there. And just try and do a little bit every year to make your home FireSmart.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Well said, my friend.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you being here, David.
Thank you.
And as David says, don't make the fire department be your number one go-to. Be FireSmart. You can't outsmart fire, but you certainly can prepare for it better. Thanks for joining us, and have a safe summer out there this year. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time on Coast Connections.